Welcome to the SDE Professional Development Mental Health Needs for Students, brought to you by Kiamichi Tech's Workforce and Economic Development.
Good morning, my name is Christopher Graham. I'm a director at Carl Albert Community Mental Health Center here in McAlester. We have several campuses all over Southeast Oklahoma, including Stigler, Holdenville, Huebner, Idabel, kind of everywhere. Generally in Hugo, we're all over Southeast Oklahoma. So I travel all over and I talk about these types of topics all day long: trauma awareness and severe mental illness. So hopefully I'm going to give you some great information today that's going to help you out. I would like to say that as we go through this, some of the content could be very triggering because it's not comfortable. This isn't an easy conversation to have. It's not an easy conversation to listen to. So if you need a break, take a hot minute. You're not going to offend me. Press pause. Do whatever you need to do. So here we go. The brain. This is a lot of fun. I love these types of conversations. When we talk about trauma, we don't often realize how impactful early development is. And at Carl Albert, we work with people of all ages, so as young as 3, as old as 103, and older if that's even possible. I have no idea. But we work with all types of ages, all types of people, all types of difficulties, and what we find is that the brain grows at very different rates, and very different things are important depending on where a person is at their age. So when it comes to trauma, it's extremely important that we recognize the points that early development have on brain growth. So for this first brain here, you've got a very young brain, and then you've got like this preteen, maybe 8 to 10, and then you've got the teenage brain, which is entertaining to say the least. And then you've got the older brain where it's not maybe fully developed, but it's really close to it. And so our brain finishes growing. For guys, we're a little bit slow. So for guys, it stops maybe at about 28 to 30 years old. And for a female, it's about 24 to 26. So when we start growing and start developing, it's at like age 5, 6 years old that our personality actually sets in. So any kind of trauma that happens early on impacts a person forever. It impacts their relationships, it impacts how they connect with people, it impacts their work performance, and it's kind of like we have these questions that have to be answered. So from 0 to 6, we're looking at like, am I safe in this world? And if that question isn't answered, it leads to disconnections from other people, and it leads to disruptions in the way that we process stress. So even if a baby doesn't recognize or know what kind of stress they're under, it can have a profound impact on them for the rest of their life. So I like to think of it like your personality. There are like 4 different types of people, and so I'm a licensed therapist, and so I love working with all different types of folks. But if I had to narrow it down to like 4 ways, the best description I can give is like, as we approach an elevator, right? So you have the type of people that before they ever step into the elevator, they mentally calculate the combined weight of all the passengers and compare it to the maximum posted weight restriction, and then they may not even get on, right? And then you've got the other people that are like, hold the door open for people, they'll let them get off on other floors, they'll help them with their stuff. Then you've got another person that loves the elevator, they see it as like this social experience, and they love talking to people, and they'll hold the door to finish conversations, and people are like, bye. And then you've got someone like me that walks straight into the elevator and like slams the closed door button repeatedly over and over and over again, right? And then that probably cancels it out, so it delays my suffering. But those are the types of personalities that are developed, and all of that happens even before someone is 6 years old. So as a therapist, we're looking at psychological factors, we're looking at environmental factors, we're looking at biological factors, and we're seeing that stress that happens to a child has not just a profound emotional impact on them, but it has a profound physiological, an actual physical reaction to them. For example, this right here is a normal 3-year-old brain. Okay, this is what a 3-year-old brain should look like and would look like. Healthy, big, beautiful, probably a very graded picture, so you might not be able to see it very well on here, but you notice that if you look at someone that's had extreme neglect, now this is before 3 years old. Maybe you're some kind of a prodigy and you remember life before 3. I do not, okay? I maybe remember Cheerios and SpaghettiOs, but that's about it. So for a child that can't even remember what's happened to them, this is their brain. And it's almost like their brain is under intense pressure, constant pressure, and you can see it. It even looks like the brain is just kind of squished into the skull. And it didn't take abuse, it didn't take anything really violent to make this happen. It's just extreme neglect that led to a real physiological issue. So how does that impact you? How does that impact me? Well, when it comes to my job, I'm going to keep hitting back the whole time. When it comes to my job, what I'm looking at is not just the psychological impact of trauma or severe mental illness, but I'm looking at all of the causal effects, right? The things that happened that led to that moment. But then I'm also looking at how does it impact them for the lifetime. As I said at the beginning, we see people of all ages and all stages. You know people at all ages and stages. Maybe you have a child, right? You probably have 1 or 2 friends. Maybe you know someone who's older than you. A parent is probably going to be older than you. How their life has played out really has been a product of what happened early on. And you find yourself right now at this place where your life is maybe just beginning. You're changing career paths. You're going maybe into different expertise that maybe you have never been involved in. And so how your early development has played out has really brought you to this moment and could project what happens later on. So right here, this is the ACE study. The ACE study stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So from 95 to like 97, there was a place in SoCal that came up with this type of a study, and it was one of the largest of its kind, and it covered different races, different backgrounds, different cultural experiences, different ages, and it just talked about what happened to you early on that maybe impacted not just psychological but also physical issues. So this is the list that they came up with. Now 10 things, this is just a binary assessment, okay? So 10 things that you could find and probably would find almost everywhere. Alright, certainly Southeast Oklahoma. I've spent a lot of time in Michigan and New Hampshire, Louisiana, and so even in all of those places, these are really, really, really common. I mean, if you're looking at like abuse, you've got physical, emotional, sexual abuse. If you're talking about negligence, of course, physical and emotional. But then you go into things like household dysfunction, okay? And you've got like mental illness, right? Depression is one of the leading causes of disability now. It's projected by 2022, and with the pandemic, it's probably going to be sooner than that, that will be the leading cause, certainly in the United States and even going worldwide. So mental illness pretty much everywhere, incarcerated relatives, domestic violence, substance abuse, even something as simple as divorce, right? Higher among religious people. So all of these things, just a binary questionnaire. Did this happen to you before you were 18 years old? And this is so relevant because it tells us what may happen and what you have a natural propensity for later on. So from these types of issues, it actually leads to early death. Okay? The higher the score, the more likely you are to die up to 35 years younger than the national average. Okay? So I'll break it down for you so it makes a little more sense. You have an adverse experience. You can answer 1 or 2 or 3 on that chart. You have an adverse experience, leads to the brain being squished in, pressure, right? Neurodevelopment issues. And then you have social and emotional issues that come from that. Then maybe some health risk behaviors. So maybe you like carbs and they're comfort to you. And so it's not a very healthy lifestyle. It is a fun lifestyle, but maybe not a healthy lifestyle. And then you have disabilities that come from that, like diabetes, etc. And then wouldn't you know it, at the very end, you're dead, right? So if I made it really simple, you see someone domestically violent, leads to anxiety and depression later on. It might lead to alcoholism, and then cirrhosis of the liver, and then early death. So where I come in is I recognize that the impact that early development has, if we go back to this, if you have these things before 18 years old, what our program looks at is not just what kind of emotional disruptions are there going to be, but what kind of physical health issues are there going to be for you later on in life. And it's our responsibility to help catch that. So if you have a score of 4 or more, you are up to 5,100% more likely to have a suicide attempt. In Southeast Oklahoma alone, we have a suicide every week. Most of us probably know someone who's attempted or threatened suicide. This is just one statistic though. It's not just emotional. You are 390% more likely to have COPD, 460% more likely to have depression, 250% more likely to have an STD. And it's not just that, it's diabetes, it's asthma, it's broken bones, it's all of those things. They're impacted by a higher ACE score. So you, your friends, your family, anyone who could answer yes to any of those questions of any of those issues that might have happened before 18 have a higher propensity to having long-term chronic physical and emotional issues. Because for someone who struggled and lived with trauma, life becomes the consequence. Life becomes the consequence. Now we've got all of these really fancy terms, and if you're into psychology, maybe you like these terms. I'm grateful I don't have to write all of these every day. Some of them are very long. But some of the things that I see regularly, I spent a lot of time doing behavior plan development for really sick kids when I was in Louisiana. I worked with some of the sickest of the sick as far as adults, people who lived in group homes, in urban Baton Rouge. I worked with many people that had schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and some really severe issues. But all of that starts at a really young age. And it starts with trauma. It starts with biological factors. It starts with a predisposition that maybe a person didn't even ask for. So trauma shows up in all kinds of ways. Impulsivity, disrespectful behavior, defiance, anxiety, depression, agitation. A lot of people think that the opposite of depression is happy. Well, it's actually activity. Right? So people that have low energy, low motivation, they often will have depressed symptoms. And so they're not actively doing things. These are all warning signs. These are things that I look for. These are things that I'm constantly aware of. I'm constantly asking about. I'm looking at what's your sleep like? What's your appetite like? What's your engagement with other people? The number one predictor for psychosis later on is isolation. When someone is in solitary confinement, they're usually going to be prone to having some type of a psychotic symptom. And psychosis isn't like Christian Bale in the movie Psycho, but psychosis is more of a disruption in reality. View of reality changes. And that happens from experiences that we can't explain, we can't understand, and we're trying to make sense of it. So for people that have trauma, life becomes the consequence. Life becomes the punishment. It's not something they're asking for, it just happens. The good news is that, and this is like the only slide that I'll read, Research supports that the single biggest thing that helps kids recover from any kind of traumatic experience, maltreatment, neglect, is a stable, supportive adult who believes in them, who supports them, and models and teaches effective coping skills. The number one thing that we need as people is someone to show up and accept us. Someone to show up and tell us that we are valuable, that we're worthy. Someone to show up and explain to us that we can make it through this, that we have the tools. Because it's not about what's wrong with you. It's not about what are you doing wrong or what are you doing right. It's about what happened to you. What didn't happen for you. What happened that you maybe don't even remember or can't explain. And it's not just delving into all of those issues. And the number one thing that I think people expect when they come into my office for therapy is for them to sit on the couch and me to say, "Oh, tell me how you feel about that." That's not good therapy. That's actually just a halfway decent conversation. What we're looking for is, what do you need to be successful? That's what probably your professors are looking for. That's maybe what your family is looking for. At Carl Albert Community Mental Health, that's what we do. We look for what you need to be successful. For your emotional health, for your mental health, right? For your physical health, for your relationship health. We're looking to help you get to your goal. We're looking to help you invest in you. To do that, we have a ton of supports. So these are all of our facilities, all of the things that we do. We have behavioral health supports. We have psychiatrists, we have primary care doctors, we have therapists, we have crisis response teams, we have people with lived experience, recovery support specialists, and it is our job, it is our goal to help you reach your highest potential. In collaboration with KTC and surrounding agencies, we just want to spread the information and spread the knowledge that can be helpful to get you to the people that you need to. So if you need anything, my name is Christopher Graham. I'm the director over at Carl Albert, and I'm here in McAllister. Our number is 918-426-7800, and if we can do anything for you, we're happy to help out. Thank you. So a question came up, how to identify the students that may be at risk in my classroom. The things that you want to look out for are disruption in normal everyday functioning. So for family issues, if it's disruption in workflow, if they're not sleeping well, if they are overwhelmed and they can't explain it, if they talk about suicidality, right? If they fantasize, if they lose interest in things that they used to enjoy. Those are all warning signs that maybe something is going on or something is off. Maybe they're not even in a traumatic situation right now, but if they had trauma early on, it does lead to things that maybe they can't even explain. So for example, when a person experiences a lot of trauma, they may be more prone to reckless behaviors. They might push against authority figures. So for me personally, my ACE score was 10, right? So I should be like dead tomorrow. And some of the things that showed up even for me was just recklessness. I had broken 20 bones before I was 17 years old because I skateboarded. And it wasn't even that I was a bad skateboarder. It was just that I would do things that would put me at risk. I neglected work. I didn't complete tasks that were given to me. I believed that this narrative that I had been taught my whole life, that you will be a failure, I believed that that had to be true. So even when I was given information to the contrary, that said maybe you're intelligent enough to do this, maybe you could achieve this, maybe you could accomplish this, I would self-sabotage. And so if someone you see the potential and they're actively struggling, and you're not sure what's going on or why, maybe get them connected with someone else, like a therapist or a school counselor, so that they can maybe push in a little bit more. If they're talking to you about suicidal behaviors or thoughts, the number one thing that you can say to them is, tell me more, right? You can let them know that if there is an immediate danger, you're going to have to go share this information. You can tell them that, when it comes to safety, I have to protect you, I have to make sure you're okay. But that statement, tell me more about what's going on for you. Don't dismiss it. Don't discourage them from talking about it. Don't get uncomfortable. The people that are more at risk for suicidal behaviors are the ones that have a history of thinking about it, or even doing things like a fantasy about dying. Because life is the consequence, so I'm going to do something to punish myself. And it doesn't even have to come across that way. The number one predictor that I find is actually a happy affect. When someone comes in, and I know that they've been depressed, and I know that they've been really down, and they come in, and they're like, everything is really good right now. We're really great. I'm okay. I immediately start screening for suicidal thoughts and behaviors, because the person that will attempt or complete suicide is the person that has come to full peace with the idea, and the belief is the world really would be better off without me. So if you see a sharp change in the demeanor or affect of your students or your friends, that might be an indication that they're at greater risk. So any sudden movements in emotion, mood, anxiety levels, be aware. It may be nothing, but it may be something. And that's worth having a conversation about. So take the time, be the support, be the one adult that will listen non-judgmentally, no bias, and offer support wherever they might need to take that next step.